Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you have your own song you'd like to submit for special selection, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's special selection comes at us from Autumn Sphere, Fall of the Leaf, Pillar of the Sun. This would have been perfect for Blank of the Blank week that we had a couple weeks ago, but we've still got it now, which is fine. Let's dive into this and see what's going on with this track, Pillar of the Sun. Yeah, all those offbeat hits really drive this section forward. Really clear cymbal bell there. I love the way it cuts through. Yes, I love that moving idea that sits there. That cymbal's just piercing through the mix. It is so crisp. Just pushing right through this. We're in the second verse already. Interesting. Oh, okay. Yeah, we are going into the second chorus. Very subtle movement in the guitar right there, I just picked up on. Okay, so this is actually that moving line I'd spoken about in the first verse. Transition from whatever it was to the guitar. I love this moment, really allowing the melody to breathe a little bit and bring in some new emotions. And they're really getting a ton of mileage out of that one line, constantly passing it to different instruments to have a different timbre associated with it. A lot of grit in that clean, a lot of natural compression put into that. Yep, drive it back to the halftime. interesting that they have that pre-chorus in there every single time. Okay. So it's a very competent radio rock track, I would say. It reminds me a lot of what is that band? Volbeat? Is that what they're called? I don't have a lot of experience with the group. I think it is Volbeat though. The vocalist especially reminds me of them. But there's also some similarities between this music and the one or two Volbeat tracks I've heard, if that's even the band name. Um, but it does remind me of something that's played on the radio or was played on the radio a while ago. It's been a long time since I've checked out Clearwater's radio station. Uh, what kind of is like the mainstream rock music that's being pushed at the moment. So that Volbeat reference might be a bit dated. Anyways, though, yeah, like I said, just a very solid radio rock track, through and through. Um, has a ton of driving energy to it. Not a lot of melodic things going on outside of the vocals, and just a blistering pace to get through the pretty standard song structure that they have going on here. So, just kind of that overview out of the way, let's dig into some of this. The guitars in both the verse and the chorus have one job, and that's to be rock. That's rule of cool metal stuff going on right there. Um, a lot of it is kind of sitting on one note and just kind of writing that out until you get your nice little your lick at the end of the phrase. And they're kind of vamping, not really vamping. I think I said vamping because that's the sound, the onomatopoeia I would use for the tone, because it got that right. It's got that, it's so fuzzy and so distorted that the hits almost feel like the attacks feel like vomps to me. This is vomp a vomp a vomp a vomp. It's got that, I don't know. It's just super fuzzy. I think of a V sound whenever I would go to I think of a V sound when I hear this guitar song. Anyways, they mostly just sit on that one tone, that one note, and write it out. A little bit of rhythmic stuff going on, and then at the end of the phrase, they have a little lick that they can play to sort of accent it and provide a bit of contrast to the single note. Around that, we have strings. I think maybe there's also some synth pads in here to widen it out, but it's just this huge orchestral, or not orchestral, huge atmospheric element to the track that widens it out and makes it feel larger than it is, while also filling out the higher end of this track, because everything's kind of a bit lower. The dude's voice is a bit lower in range, doesn't really move up into anything um, that would fill in that higher area. The guitars are consistently down. They don't really move into their higher strings. There isn't really a guitar solo section where they would move into that. A lot of it is probably just focusing on the three lowest strings of the guitar. Our bass is certainly not going to be getting up there. So they opted to use synths and strings to fill in the part that would be empty without it. And we can actually hear a couple of sections. I think as soon as the song starts, we can hear a rendition of this track, or at least a rendition of the verse, I think, without the strings in it. And it really wasn't that bad when it came in. But after we had heard the strings up there and they pulled it, I think it was the bridge, which was the second time that we got to hear just mostly the guitars, bass, and drums, you really feel like it's a bit anemic of a production. It's one of those things where you don't know it's missing until you've heard it, and then when you realize it's not there, it's kind of big. It's kind of a big deal. And yeah, that's exactly what's going on there with the strings. There is also this one line that gets utilized a lot. We hear it here in the second half of our verse. And it kind of sounds like a plucked violin to me to begin with. It could also have been some sort of um xylophone, maybe even a glockenspiel, just certainly something in that area. It's more of a I don't want to say it's a tinny sound, but it is higher up in the range. It sits above everything else that's playing anything close to being a melody, anything that's not just chords. And it's this nice moving idea that comes in as a call and response versus the bump 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 kind of idea that's going on in the guitars. We get that, and then they hold out a note, and we get this nice moving, beautiful melody chime kind of thing going on in the middle. And then we get the rhythmic stuff in the guitars, and then we get this chime thing coming back in. Um, Really nice idea there, and it was sort of a one-off. This melody doesn't appear back in the verse. I don't remember hearing it in our second, or it doesn't appear in the chorus. It doesn't appear in our second verse, I think, because it's shortened. I think our second verse is half as long. We don't actually get to that second portion of it like we did in the first verse. And then we move back into the second chorus, and again, we don't have it. And I'm like, oh, that was kind of a neat thing that we just kind of did once. And then the entire bridge utilizes it by passing it around. We'll touch on that when we get to the bridge, but I think it's really interesting that this thing pops up once, ducks out for like 3 more minutes, and then refuses to leave for an entire section. Um, it's really interesting how that works. But I also think it's a great part of this opening verse. It absolutely needs to be here, at least for me. To my ears, there's just it's very, like I said, rule of cool. Does it sound awesome to listen to? Does it make me want to move my body or nod my head or whatever? And yes, it has drive, it has intensity, it has momentum, but there's just something about rock. I don't know what it is that just sort of bounces off of me now. And the thing is, 5 years ago, I would have been okay with this, maybe even 3 years ago. And, I've mentioned many times a lot of my favorite bands, especially ones that I still listen to, that I picked up on in my 20s, have simpler music. Some of my favorite albums sit firmly, very adjacent to this structure and composition style. But for whatever reason, in the past handful of years, I've had a really hard time really connecting with music like this. And it feels kind of flat to me, and I wonder where other people sit on that, because I don't think it has anything to do with the music. I don't think it has anything to do with the production. Everything is technically proficient, lining up with um, the ways that this style of music are typically created, both compositionally and production wise. I don't think there's anything lacking here. I have a harder time connecting with it than I did previously. And I think that kind of sucks, because I know radio rock kind of gets a bad rep, but radio rock actually has a lot of jams in it that I really love. And I wish I could still have that. Maybe I've just moved to a different style of music that I want or need in my life right now, and maybe in another 5 years I'll come back to this style and enjoy it again. But I am a little disappointed that I'm finding it difficult to engage with it the way that I used to be able to. Um, so anyways, though, after this, we move into the chorus, and there's something really interesting happening here, in that we have one, 2 bars maybe as a pre-chorus of space. It's just some chords. It's a really interesting way to take all this energy we've created in the verse and allow it to dissipate a little before coming into the chorus. And the only reason I can think that this would be done is to help provide some contrast because the verse and the chorus, sonically, emotionally, chordally, even sort of energy wise, are very similar. And this sort of gives the listener a moment to put a break there and say, oh, okay, we're moving from one idea to the next. We're going to bring it down from, a 7 to a 6.5, so that when we come back up to 7, it at least feels a little fresher. And it does. The vocalist comes in with a punch. That first hit of the chorus itself, not this, 1 to 2 bar intro, really hits. It comes in hard. And we do have some new melodic ideas going on. The guitars, they have a new idea. The strings continue on with the chord thing, but they also have this dynamic thing where we reduce their width and volume a little bit every once in a while to create a call and response idea going on there, where we have a larger production and then a thinner production and a larger production and thinner production, and it gives the chorus a bit of an ebb and flow. Um, where was I going with all that though? I don't know. Anyways, oh, very similar vibes though. The guitars are once again doing chordal things. Our strings are doing chordal things. We don't have our chime-based melody going on there, but we do have this dynamic movement in that width and compression kind of idea going on. And then our vocals are just very solid here. They are, much like our verse, providing the key melody for this section. And I think it is all very, once again, well done. The execution here is not a problem at all. Um, Interestingly, though, I think I mentioned this too in the reaction. We go straight from the verse back into the chorus. There is no break there at all. It is very breakneck. I definitely need to give this a second listen to kind of get a better feeling for it. Because, like I said, they do. There's just a lot of similarity between the two vibes, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just it makes it difficult for me to listen to it on a first time and break it down, because the way that I listen to music for this specific purpose is to look for landmarks that I can pack away in a folder and pull back out later. Simple words or phrases that's going to jog my memory for what happened in that situation. I am by no means remembering 5 minutes worth of music. I'm remembering vibes, feelings, techniques. There's a reason why, if you look at my timestamps, it's typically like the Hocket section, or the bridge that changed, or massive contrast. Like, these are topics I'm like, oh, this is what this section is doing. Let me file that away. And then when I think, what was that second verse? Oh, that was, the contrast section. That was the part where we had the different arrangement or something, a very simple concept. And then I can think about, oh, this is how they achieved that. And that's more of the recollection. Um, I don't really have too many unique verbs or descriptions, adjectives of these two sections, which is not a bad thing. If they really want that homogenized sound for this thing, maybe there's a narrative reason for it. Um, that's perfectly fine. It's just, for me, it feels weird because there's so little differentiation between them, and I feel like I've missed something, because the two folders, it's like that meme where it shows you two pictures and they're like, that's the same picture. That's what it feels like to me. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Musical tools are just that. There is no wrong way to make music. It's all about what you're trying to achieve. It just feels weird to me to not have, like, this is what's making it different. This is how it's, advancing the song or something. It really just feels like these are the same thing going on. And really, this moment is what kind of confuses my brain, because the chorus goes straight into the verse, and it feels like it doesn't skip a beat, it doesn't change anything, it just melds perfectly back into it. We shift the guitars back to that vampy kind of sound, and our strings well, they continue doing what they do. They widen out and fill out that top end, and we just keep rolling. We go back to the old vocal melody, and that's kind of it. Um, there is one last thing I want to say about the chorus, and that is the bell on the ride cymbal. I don't know if it's supposed to be that prominent, but it pierces right through. It cuts right through the mix and hits my ear, and there's something very gorgeous about it. It might be just a tad bit too much, but I love the fact that it cuts through and it is this hyper clear sound against these very distorted guitars and the compression. Not a lot of compression, but a little bit of compression on the vocals, and sort of the wall of sound strings that are going on to just have that angelic choir feeling rather than hearing the individual instruments themselves. Like there's a lot of bringing things together, right, in making this unified sound. And then there's this ride cymbal that's just this beautiful, crisp tone, just tinging in my ear, and it is, it is good. Like I said, maybe it's just a hair too hot, but it's such an odd choice that works. It really does. The rest of the drum kit is not EQ'd like that at all. It is lit, and the thing is too is sometimes I think there's one section where it uses more of the brim of the cymbal. I don't know the rest of it instead of the bell at the very top. But when he gets on that bell, it just pierces through everything, and it's very warm and comforting to me. Now, maybe not everybody will have that. Like I said, it's a very choice decision. Very interesting, but I enjoy it. It stood out to me right at the beginning, and every time it came in, it was just like, yes. Um, then we go into the bridge. This is the first big shift, and it's still not a huge shift. Our chord progression is not too different. Our emotional landscape hasn't changed much. Our instrumental roles are still kind of where they're at. Our strings continue to sit up top. The vocals come in every once in a while to take our lead melody. Our bass sits in the middle and kind of just lays down what it's been doing the whole time, which is occasionally laying down a small lick at the end of a phrase, but mostly just kind of riding out a pedal tone, kind of like what the guitars have been doing as well. However, I had mentioned way back in the first verse, there's a little melody that comes up every once in a while in our string section, I think. I'm still not sure what instrument it is, but it is one of the non rock instruments that are utilized in that part. Its melody gets given to an acoustic guitar and then an electric guitar and then the other electric guitar and then back to the acoustic guitar and then given to the strings for a moment before we come back to the third verse and it's lost entirely. But it's interesting how it's almost hot potato passed around between these instruments. Like they can't hold on to it for too long, someone else needs to take it. And it's interesting also how each instrument continues to retain more or less its role. The strings will do chordal atmospheric stuff and then do the melody and then back to their chords. And the guitars will have a little rhythmic thing that they're doing and then they do the melody and then they go back to their rhythm. And it's a really interesting passing around of this idea of getting to hear it within different contexts and through different timbres. I don't know narratively, thematically, what it's doing here because honestly, I don't have a very strong emotional read on the story here. I don't really see much of a story being told to me through the music alone. To me, it just sounds like a series of ideas that are extremely closely related, and they come together and make a decent jam. There's nothing in here that's really, what's that word I want? Unpalatable. It all sounds very well done together. But nothing that really stands out to me is telling a story, not in the same way that other tracks do. Like yesterday's, what even was that? Oh, Fleet Foxes, The Shrine and Argument. That song told me a story from beginning to end, even without lyrics. You know, some songs are just, they're just created that way. And this one just feels like it's the music that sits under the vocals. And there's absolutely, again, nothing wrong with that. Not every song needs to be thematically cohesive, where the music is just as important to the storytelling process as the lyrics are. Or some songs don't even have lyrics. The story is told completely through the musical language. This one kind of sits closer to older, no, some older blues, some older swing. Just a lot of pop music in general, though, where the music is a foundational element to support the lyrics. Anyways, back to this bridge, though. Other than this moving idea, I don't really remember much here that really stood out to me. There were a couple of really nice guitar riffs here, and they were all blink and you miss it, which it's just a little disappointing for me personally because of what I mentioned earlier, where I just wasn't really connecting to what's happening here. Not that the song's doing anything wrong, it's just not, for me, it's not my cup of tea. And there were a couple of licks here that started to open up the song for me and showcased a side of the musicians that they weren't showing, which is fine. The song that they wanted to make didn't really need it, but the song that I would have liked to hear could have used more of those little embellishments all over the place. They had the chops for it, they just didn't use them. And again, that's not to say that it's a worse song because of it. It just would have been better for me. For one single person in the world, I would have enjoyed it better if we heard more of those little runs and embellishments, or even just something that wasn't more traditional rock or metal style guitar rhythmic playing. Just give me a little bit more melody, and it would have worked so much better for me. But, Follow the Leaf has no obligation to making their music more palatable for my ears. They have one obligation, and that's to themselves. Maybe a secondary obligation to their fans, depending on how you want to view that, but primary obligation is always making music for yourself. Um, so, yeah, not a better song. I just would have liked it better. Um, And then we finish out with a verse again, going into our odd pre chorus dip into our chorus to wrap the track up. And we did hear some more embellishments there as well. There was that really nice, like 16th note run. It was like 8 back to back hits from both of our guitars, harmonized dyads. Really cool idea. And then they just went back to rhythmic playing again. Like I said, for me, those little moments were a little frustrating, but I get they just wanted to make this song the way it is, you know? And I think they did a great job at sitting within this style and really just nailing the radio rock kind of vibe. We talk about innovative and iterative bands often. This one is one that iterates on a perfect and refine down a specific formula, and they do a phenomenal job at doing that. There's absolutely nothing to take away from a band that follows, tropes or ideas a little more closely rather than coloring outside the lines, because we honestly need bands like that to help us refine sounds. Now, I have to talk about the vocals. Is this. Here's the weird thing is that a big pet peeve of mine when it comes to growls is enunciation. It is sort of make and break for me. Growls where the vocalist does not enunciate, it's not lazy. I don't want anyone to think that I'm some high horse riding harsh vocal critic or anything like that. But if the way I kind of feel it, and this isn't an intentional thing, it's not like me just trying to be pompous or anything, but just the way my brain works is that if the vocals are pushed into the mix where I can't understand them, or not enunciated well where it sounds like they're slurring together, it feels lazy. And again, I'm not calling the vocalist lazy. It just feels like that to me. And I always have a negative disposition towards that style of growling. There are a couple of bands that we have heard very clean, immaculate, articulated growls, and I have fallen in love with that. It hasn't always been exactly the music I want. Sometimes it's just a bit too harsh for me, but I really love that attention to detail paid to the vocals. You are writing lyrics and presenting them in a vocal technique that not everyone can do. You're obviously putting the work into it. Just make it a little clearer so that your work can be better appreciated. I shouldn't have to go look at a lyric page to figure out what you did. But there's also the other end of that, dirtier productions and the power of pushing the vocals into the mix, and like there's a lot of reasons to not do that. That are, even I would say, as much as I'm not a big fan of them, have purpose, right? They help specific sounds come out, and I've already said it twice before on this video alone. Every tool in the toolbox is valid. It's just how you use them to make whatever sound you want to. Um, so to bring this around to this, there are some really cool harsh sounds in here that I think are neat in the context of completely looking at it as a sonic property. Very cool moments. But as far as the vocals go, I could not understand a single word in here. And if I didn't already know that they were singing in English, I would really have wagered this was not an English band, or that they were singing in a made-up language or just a different language or anything just not English, because that's the only language that I can hear and make heads and tails of. A little bit of Spanish, but más pequeño. Very little bit of Spanish. Uh, And it really, I mean, I see that there's English lyrics here, but I did not pick up on a single syllable or even collection of syllables that sounded like English in any way, shape, or form. And there's nothing wrong with that once again. But it's just a little pet peeve of mine. And I had to make a point of that because I think, let me check real quick, because I think we have these guys coming up later this week again, or like next week. Oh, tomorrow. And Monday in 2 weeks. So yeah, we have a lot of Follow the Leaf ahead of us. Um, oh, we got quite a few bands actually. Completely like off topic here. We actually have quite a few bands that we're hearing 2 songs from in a close time. A week and a half apart from each other. Y'all are lining things up interestingly. It's like with when one song comes out and everybody gets the same idea. Oh, he'd also like this other band, and like everybody gets that same idea. Anyways, back to this though. Um, I didn't expect it here. I'm gonna try to not talk about this in the next 2 Follow the Leaf videos, but yeah, it's a pet peeve of mine. I don't know. Let's move on. Let's dive into some lyrics here. Let's figure out what this dude was telling me, but I couldn't hear. Looking at your face is like staring into a void. I brought you back. You show me your face. Children laugh and play. In chains, you drag your feet to the marketplace. You smile like a child. You are not deceived. You had dreams before. The sun rises in a pillar of flame. You hide in a fortress of sadness. I never knew you. Huh. So we have somebody who is detained and forced to act like everything is okay. I think that's what that point is, where it says you smile like a child, but you're not deceived. Um, it says, I look in your face and it's like staring into a void. You drag your feet in chains to the marketplace. You smile, but you're not deceived. You had dreams. The sun rises in a pillar of flames while you hide in a fortress of sadness. That metaphor is going over my head, but all the other aspects are landing well. Your shoulders bend for a statue in living rock. Operculum of silver, the sculptor signs his name. Sun devours moon with relish. I'm a scent on the sighing breeze, an ever-rising laugh like bells. Caught in the sphere of your umbra, the sun sets like a wound of scarlet. Do not let these words confuse you. You are looking for a message you left behind. Staring at the horizon, my heart is filled with fever. Your diplomacy beats down on me and promises rain. It has been a long time since I felt a fear of life. You promise to share the alchemy of your gaze with me. It burns through your ozone, and I dissolve. What? Okay, there's obviously something going on between these two people. Our narrator wants to be around this other person. It doesn't say why. It doesn't really matter why. This other person, though, is very beaten down about life. They're very disillusioned with life. They feel the shackles on their body. They smile, though they know that it's only because they're forced to. They're not actually happy. They hide in a fortress of sadness. There's a sphere of umbra that emanates around them or surrounds them in another way. Um, but our narrator is still consumed by this person. So much so that they want to understand the alchemy of their gaze and allow it to burn through and dissolve them. Huh. I mean, that's pretty much what I get. There's probably a lot of really neat metaphor and illusions going on here. You probably dive into this quite a bit deeper and find some neat ideas going on. But I mean, I think on the surface, just like the cursory reading of what's going on here, I think that's the gist of it. And it's kind of sad. It isn't like a song that says, I understand that your life isn't great and I want to help you. It's, I understand your life isn't great and I'm enthralled by it. uh, Interesting. Those are my thoughts on Fall of the Leaf's Pillar of the Sun. Looking forward to tomorrow and see what they're gonna bring in another track. I don't know if the third one we have in 2 weeks, if that's off the same album or not. I don't know if this one's off the same album. We'll just keep diving into it. We'll see what's going on. Okay, I cheated. Tomorrow's is off the same album, but it looks like next Monday's is not. Not this upcoming Monday, the Monday after. Um, so that'll be interesting. See how they've changed a little bit, and we'll also get another taste of their style in this era. All right, cool. Anyways, so I stopped rambling and actually wrap this up. This is where you guys come in, hit me up with your comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this or not. Anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to add on to what I stated or correct me on. Let me know. Above the comment section is a description box, and in there is a link for Linktree. In there you'll find this menu right here. It's a pretty cool thing. Has everything related to the channel. You can pick up some merch, support the channel through Patreon, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, and so much more. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. We'll continue on with Folk Week and check out another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.